Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session of Framing the Future, a seminar series in which we hope to present issues that help frame the discussion for what the future of forestry is in Maryland. And we have today a very excellent topic, one which is having even more broad impact on the landscape than many of us initially perhaps anticipated. My name is Gary Allen. I'm the president of the Maryland Forestry Foundation, and it's our pleasure to present this series of webinars. I want to remind all of you that it is being recorded. It will be available on our website, marylandforestryfoundation.org, in less than a week after the session is completed. Please share that information widely, since many have indicated an interest and perhaps could not join us for one reason or another today during the month of August, widely used vacation period for many, myself being one of them. As a matter of fact, I happen to be in Tampa, Florida today and not in Annapolis, where the picture is right behind me. It's my pleasure to introduce our webinar moderator, Megan Carr, one of our early Mel Fellows. Megan is currently an urban forester for the city of Baltimore, and she's been our moderator for the very beginning. It's also my pleasure to indicate that she's a member of the board of directors for the Maryland Forestry Foundation. Megan, it's my pleasure to welcome you, and I want to turn it over to you to welcome and introduce our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I'm very happy to be here today for a really important discussion. Before we kick things off, just a couple last-minute housekeeping notes for our audience. As Gary noted, the webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to view this again at a later date. And if the registration for this webinar was forwarded to you and you'd like to receive notices about our future installments in this webinar series, you can go on over to marylandforestryfoundation.org and click on webinars. There's a quick little widget on that page where you can enter your email address to receive notices. And that's also the same page where you can find all of those recordings. So throughout today's discussion, we welcome you to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to enter questions for our speakers to address. We have about 10 to 15 minutes set aside at the end of today's session to go over all of your questions. We will read those aloud so that folks who are watching this in the future can appreciate those. And we hope to have a good discussion on this later on. And so with that, we're very glad to have everyone joining with us for an important discussion on an emerging threat to our regional forests. Beech leaf disease has spread rapidly from its first detection around a decade ago and is now found in most counties in Maryland. So today we're going to be talking about both what we stand to lose as this disease progresses and about the current state of research on what we can do and what we might expect in the future. First up, we are joined by Daniel Root, who's the Forest Health Specialist with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources Forest Service. He's been with the Maryland Forest Service for 3 years. Prior to joining the Maryland Forest Service, he served in the U.S. Army for 17 years. He graduated from the University of Kentucky in 2021 with a bachelor's degree in forestry and a minor in wildlife management. Daniel manages the State Forest Legacy Program, which assists private landowners in conserving their forested lands. He also manages the Forest Health Program to turn the tide of invasive species and native plant decline. Daniel believes that the importance of forest health is at the pinnacle of the stewardship field and encompasses every aspect of forestry. We're very pleased to be joined by him today. So I'll turn it over to you, Daniel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me see if I can get into the presentation. Share my screen. Is that good? Can everybody see that?
Yeah, looks good.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk today about American beech, which is scientific name is Ficus grandifloria, and why it's important. There's 3 big importances that I'm going to cover. Basically, it's ecological importance, its importance to wildlife, and also economic importance, and kind of what we stand to lose as a result of beech leaf disease and what it could do. So first, American beech is a very recognizable tree. It's one of the main components of our northern hardwoods. We've got beeches, oaks, maples, and it's classed as a very shade tolerant species. So you see it quite a bit in mid-story and understory. So and it's more than likely it's the most tolerant species that we have. It does have dense canopies. Those canopies can provide, basically windbreaks and protection for a lot of understory plants and tree species. So, and also with their leaves, they tend to persist late in the year, which provide good visual screening, especially along roadways and everything, just to keep things. So, beech can persist for a long period of time. I mean, some trees have been recorded at over 300, 400 years old. So those long-lived species, they play a role in the carbon cycle. They store significant amounts of carbon. Their extensive root systems can also provide soil stabilization, prevent erosion, and there's quite a bit more. I mean, they're of course with ecological, they provide good habitat. Going into wildlife, they provide very good habitats for nesting birds, plants, and other animals, as well as mammals. They also are home to a variety of native fungi, mosses, and lichen species. They are the only nut producer in the northern hardwood type. Their beech nuts are very palatable. They provide food source for many native species of birds and mammals, as deer, bears, squirrels. Even they're very palatable. Even humans can consume beech nuts. So, and as I said before, they provide nesting cavities, and their canopies offer shelter and foraging areas. And they also support approximately 1,000 species of insects. And this wide range of species also attracts insectivorous birds and mammals. So they host species like the woolly beech aphid, leafhoppers, ants, an extensive list of moths and butterfly caterpillars. And then going into the economic, I'll spend quite a bit on this, as this is what's going to result if we start losing all of our beech trees. So according to the USDA FIA data, the American beech makes up approximately 12% of all tree species within Maryland. The FIA data plots that they have, there's approximately 12,400,000 beech trees in Maryland. That's quite a bit. I think that's about 9 or 10% of the basal area in the state. And of course, beech wood is very useful. It's used in flooring and furniture. A lot of the products that we use, term products, novelties, veneer, plywood, railroad ties for some of the larger diameter species, 20 inch in diameter and up, are used for railroad or tie logs and tie mats. And it's especially it's also used for fuel wood, a lot of firewood, because it's a very high density tree and it does have good burning qualities. So. Also, they make creosote from beech wood. Some people are familiar with creosote, like the coal tar creosote they use to kind of protect wood from rots. But beechwood creosote is also used internally and externally. It's a various form of medicines and that humans and animals are treated. But I would say the main thing that we stand to lose, primarily, the highest thing would be the impacts to our native animals and bird species. In Maryland, beechwood isn't used that much for the industry, but its impacts, it's massed in the food and shelter it provides to our native mammals, especially in Western Maryland with the bear species and squirrels and everything. Due to the impacts of beech leaf disease, we stand to lose quite a bit of one of the major food crops for our native species. There's only a few out there. We've got acorns from oaks, which not to jump out of beech leaf disease, but we're also having issues with our oaks, and we don't need to lose another one of our mass species here in Maryland. And that can cause all sorts of issues with various mammal species like bears, having loss of this product, turning to other things as they start becoming a nuisance within urban areas. And then, of course, losing those insect species that are very vital for other species that feed on those is going to be a very big problem. I think the second largest issue that we have is going to can be primarily for landowners who have beech trees and land managers on their property. As we know, not to step on Brady's feet, but beech leaf disease does affect all age classes of beech. So as we start losing, younger and larger diameter species of beechwood, kind of like what happened with the emerald ash borer and the ash, we could see an influx of beechwood into the market, which could flood the market and cause some prices to basically drop. And then we just have quite a bit of beechwood out there that's just unusable, or there's so much of it that we can't use it, and it ends up just staying there on the site, which can in turn increase fire risk, as you have quite a bit of that woody debris down. And of course, as these trees die, we also have issues to recreation, which is pretty big here in Maryland, with trees falling on people that risk for death. And a lot of the beech trees that we have already are very susceptible to heart rot issues. We've seen quite a bit out there. Some of the native fungi and pathogens that we have, there's a lot already going on, but just this other thing would accelerate the mortality of a lot of our beech species, which can pose a risk to recreation and people out hiking. Not so many beech trees are in urban areas, but there are some which can also cause risk to residential areas. One thing I would pose to land managers, this is something, as we're learning about beech leaf disease, something to think about for the future, something to get ahead of right now would be, if there are a lot of beech species on your land and you're worried about them dying, some of the large diameter beech trees can be used for tie logs and mats. I think it would be very good to start thinking about things now, thinking ahead of the game. And it's almost kind of like what happened with the ash, where it's not a matter of if, but when. But just trying to look ahead of things and planning. I would definitely some of the larger diameter trees, if you do not want to use some of the preventative measures that they're going to have out there that are available. Some of them can be quite expensive, but I would start thinking about what to do with those. Like I said, some of the large diameter, 20 inches in diameter and above, can be used for those. They're not a preferred one, but they will take those for making railroad ties and crane mats and everything. I'm going to go back yeah, the most important thing to think about is trying to get ahead of it and trying to think about what we can do, try to manage our land. And, if we lose another one of our, you know, main species of hardwoods, it's going to be very disastrous to both, not so much to the industry, but like I said before, it's a very significant impact to both our native mammals and bird species. Kind of went too fast. I do apologize. I That's all that I have.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that's a really great context for people to have kind of going into this larger discussion. And I'm sure we're going to have quite a few questions from folks coming up on, getting into some of the details of like the large concepts that you introduced there. And we can certainly, I'm sure, chat about it further. And I think Brady was trying to come off of having her camera off, and she might have hit the wrong button. So we're going to hang tight for a moment here while she signs back in. So actually, while we're doing that, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about a few of the things that you were mentioning. And one thing that's striking to me, so I'm coming from a very urban context in terms of the forests that we manage, and it feels like the places that I tend to see a lot of beech trees are either are really large urban forests. So in Baltimore, you came out with us to visit Druid Hill Park, where we have quite a bit. There's also a lot of areas in Herring Run and Gwynns Falls Leakin Park, but also places like Rock Creek Park down in DC have, despite being very urban, have really large swaths of beech. And I think in part that's driven by white-tailed deer. So since it's not really a native species that they tend to heavily browse. Um, but in your experience, is it also given the longevity, um, like are old growth forests a particular site where they might be especially impacted as beech leaf disease comes in?
I would say they could, because a lot of the older growth or second growth where you have large diameter beech species, a lot of those were left behind if they did any historical cuts on the property. I know some of the areas that I've seen in Kentucky, beech wasn't a species that everybody was going after the oak, so they tended to be left on site. And having those large diameter species there with the impact of beech leaf disease, I mean, they're going to open up, quite a bit of canopy space. I mean, they're not traditionally in the dominant canopy. You usually see them kind of, co-dominant or in the intermediate class, which is kind of mid-story. But as we know, when trees tend to fail and fall down, they don't just go down by themselves. They take a lot of other species with them. So I think the loss of large areas of beech can, cause other second, third order effects with opening up canopy spaces, allowing more invasive species to cultivate and grow, which can cause a lot more stressors. And a lot of our forests are under stress from quite a bit different things, not necessarily, fungal and insect pathogens, but we've got, a lot of the shifts in climate and extreme weather events. And, beech does provide a good windbreak, but the loss of those can increase a lot of the stresses with, letting in a lot of these extreme weather events can cause impacts to other species.
Yeah, I something that I like to emphasize when I'm talking to some of our volunteer stewards is that disturbance leads to more disturbance. And so yeah, I think that we're not necessarily just looking at the loss of, a single species or single habitat, but all these other spillover effects as well. So it looks like we have Brady back. So thank you, Brady, for bearing with us through Zoom being tricky. We're glad to have you here. So we'll have more conversation with Daniel and Brady at the end of today's session, but we will turn it over to Brady. Brady Holko graduated from Kent State University in 2020 with a Bachelor of Science in Botany and is currently pursuing a master's degree in plant health management from The Ohio State University. Brady works as a botanist and laboratory technician at the Davie Institute, where she performs plant problem diagnosis and beech leaf disease research. So we're very happy to have an expert on hand who has been really in the trenches with beech leaf disease for a number of years now. And Daniel,
Yes.
I think we need you to stop sharing so that we can turn it over to Brady.
Okay. Let me get this pulled up real quick. If you can all see my screen.
It's loading for me, but we'll get there soon.
All right.
Yep, that looks great.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you, Megan, for the introduction. My name is Brady Holko. I've been with Davie for 5 years, and out of those 5 years, I've been working on our beech leaf disease research for 4 years. So I'm here today to discuss the biology of the disease as well as some management strategies that we have to fight against it. So on today's agenda, I wanted to talk a little bit about the disease biology as well as the distribution. Then I'll go into Davie's research protocols and our objectives and how we kind of started using a product to manage the disease. I want to talk about our results and our project, as well as go over a couple management options for you. So a little bit of the background of beech leaf disease. It is a foliar disease that is causing significant decline in mortality of beech. And this disease was actually first detected in Lake County, Ohio, which is only about an hour drive north of where Davie's headquarters is. So it was literally right in our backyard. In 2014, it was detected in the Cleveland Metro Parks, which is a county adjacent to Lake County. In 2016, the Cleveland Metro Parks began their annual beech health surveys, and the following year, Cleveland Metro Parks and Davie initiated our management research, and we've been working on that since, and it is still ongoing. So here is the most recent map that we have showing the spread of the disease. Where I have this little star is where it all happened, where it was initially discovered in Lake County. And we are just in a county just south of it. So it was in our backyards real quick. And for whatever reason, it has spread more east than it has west. And we believe that it's because of prevailing winds. But now it is unfortunately over in your neck of the woods in Maryland, and it keeps on spreading, which is horrible. So here's what you're looking for. If you want to learn how to manage the disease, you should probably learn how to recognize it first. One of the main symptoms that you really want to look for is something called interveinal banding. Now, here where it says mild symptoms, you can kind of see what those bands look like. And they're actually easiest viewed from when you're on the ground and you're looking up into the canopy as the light shines through the leaves. So that's when you can really, really see those bands that you're looking for. So the leaves will start out completely healthy, asymptomatic, and then they'll start adding more and more bands to the leaves over time. And then eventually the symptoms will get so severe and there will be so many bands on those leaves that the leaves will start to thicken and crinkle. So, and it's also important to note that you can have all a variety of symptoms all within the same branch. So you can have leaves that are completely asymptomatic, ones that are just starting to show symptoms, and ones that are really heavily symptomatic. So the causal agent, this is kind of a weird one. It is a what's called a foliar nematode. Now, nematodes are these tiny little microscopic roundworms. And the picture on this slide is actually a slide that I took in our diagnostic lab. So they're very, very tiny microscopic roundworms. You might be familiar with something like soybean cyst nematode, which is another kind of nematode, but instead of being in the roots of those species, this one is actually present in the foliage and the buds of our beech trees. Now, the specific nematode is Lytolanchus crenati subspecies mccannii. The nematode is native to Japan. It feeds on the leaves and overwinters in the buds. And the populations are actually highest in the buds and also in those areas where you see that interveinal banding. Currently, the dispersal method is unknown, but there have been really cool research studies that have shown that the nematode can actually pass through the digestive system of birds. So we're thinking that the nematode is spread that way. And it makes sense because it's following that wind path that birds will take as they migrate. So it could possibly be spread through that or either by rain or water. So here's a video that I took of the little nematodes. You can see that they're kind of moving around on this gridded counting plate that I have. So I've definitely worked with them a lot in the lab, and they're really interesting creatures. So now we know kind of how to actually spot the disease, how to diagnose it, and what causes it. I wanted to talk a little bit about our research here at Davy. And we've been using a product called polyphosphite 30. It's a product from the Plant Food Company. It is a phosphonate or a phosphite fertilizer. So it's not it's not labeled as a pesticide. It is a 0027 potash fertilizer. Even though it's not registered as a pesticide, it does have the same active ingredient as Reliant and Agrifos fungicides. So we believe that the mode of action is a tree defense activator. So instead of actually targeting the nematode itself, it's actually boosting the tree's ability to fight off infection. So here's our protocol. So far, it's been an 8-year study initiated in 2017. We had 40 trees within the Cleveland Metro Parks. 20 of them were treated and 20 were untreated. And we did change the structure a little bit in 2023, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. The saplings that we were working with were between 2 and 4 inch DBH with mild symptoms at the beginning of the study. So we knew that the disease was actually present in our research plots. We trenched the sever root grafts, so there was no spread between the trees. We did 2 injections per inch DBH. So if we had a sapling that was 2 inches in DBH, it would get 4 injections around the base of the tree. And we did 2 applications per year, the first between May and June and the final in August. And as of just last week, we did our final treatment for the year. So the research objectives, the ones that we were really looking for were the effects of this treatment on tree health as well as nematode density. So we went and we saw how the trees actually looked, and then in the lab we counted the nematodes to see if treated trees had more or not. So the Cleveland Metro Parks every year would go out and they would analyze the canopy area as well as twig and branch dieback, and they got really fascinating results. We found that the phosphite treatments maintain that canopy health, and they also decrease this branch dieback. So in green, you can see that our treated trees had far greater canopy cover than our untreated control trees. And in the blue highlighted in here, you can see the percentage of those dead fine branches was greater in our untreated control trees. So if you were to go into our research plot, it was actually pretty clear as to what trees were treated versus untreated after several years. And this is exactly what we were seeing. So this is one of my favorite photos taken in our research plots. It's, again, like I said, it's pretty obvious as you're walking through the plots. You can see that our treated trees, our saplings had much healthier foliage, far fewer of those interveinal bands, and our control trees were looking pretty sparse. So there was plenty of dieback and a lot more heavily symptomatic leaves on our control trees. So we rated the scale, the trees on a 1 to 6 scale. 1 being completely asymptomatic and 6 being complete mortality. And I left this slide in this presentation just to kind of show you what the disease looks like as it progresses. If I can go back one. Yes, so it starts out completely asymptomatic, and then you start getting that leaf banding. Eventually, it leads into distortion, and the leaves start looking more thick and leathery. And then that's when the canopy starts dying back. So this is unfortunately what we're seeing in forests heavily affected by beech leaf disease. So after the metro parks went out and they did their analysis, that's when I would come in, I would take leaves off the trees, and I would count the nematodes present in the leaves. So we did some leaf sampling. We would take 4 leaves per tree, representative based on the symptoms displayed all over the tree. And then we would punch little holes in the leaves and count the nematodes per that square centimeter of leaf tissue. And in 2022, we did the same thing, except we took the same standardized location shown by that red circle, and then we divided the leaf into 6 regions and sampled from a separate region. And we saw that it doesn't really matter where you sample it from, we get the same results. And this is exactly what we saw. So not only did the trees look healthier, but we also found that nematode density was far less in trees that were actually treated with this phosphonate product. So we did the same thing. We're still counting the nematodes to this day, but in 2021 and 2022, those results were basically the same. So we're getting really good results as far as tree health and nematode density. So in summary, we found that treated trees had healthier leaves, greater canopy cover, less twig and branch dieback, as you saw in that photo that I shared earlier, and as well as much lower nematode density. So in 2023, we changed things up a little bit. We changed our treatment structure. So from 2017 to 22, we had 2 treatments. We had our 20 treated and 20 untreated. And then in 23, we took 20 of those treated trees. We kept treating 10 of them and started not treating the other 10. And then we took those untreated trees, we started treating 10 of them and left 10 untreated. And we found that the treatments applied through 2022 still worked in 2023, and there was a year carryover, but were not effective in 2024. So in this little box that I have highlighted, in the trees that were previously treated and then we stopped treatment, you can see that those nematode populations stayed low between 2022 and 23. And then the following year in 24, that's when the nematode quantities started going up again. And then when we started applying treatments to untreated trees for the first time, we saw immediate results, and it actually improved tree health in the following year. So here highlighted our untreated trees that were then treated. You can see that in 2022, they had plenty of nematodes in that square centimeter of leaf tissue. And then between 2 applications, whenever we counted them again in 2023, we saw that nematode population dropped significantly. So, and the second little box here, those same trees, we actually saw an improvement in tree health, overall tree health in 2024. So some major conclusions that we can draw from our research study is we can conclude that polyphosphate 30 reduced nematodes the first year, but plant health improvement was not apparent until the second year. Treatment efficacy persisted for 1 year after the treatment stopped. Regular treatments with polyphosphate 30 will keep nematode populations low. And as far as large trees go, we started a very similar study in 2021 doing soil drenches on the large trees. And the trees really haven't changed a whole lot since we started doing this study. So research is still ongoing with these larger trees, but we are still using the same rate. We're using the same product. So I've talked a lot about our research now, but I wanted to talk about some other management strategies that are available to arborists, foresters, and general homeowners as well. So the first is our polyphosphate 30 treatment, which is a very effective soil treatment, at least for our saplings. There's another foliar spray that's available called Broadform, which is a mix of fluopyram and trifloxystrobin. And there's also a trunk injection option as well called Arbitec 20S, which is thiabendazole. So I want to talk about each one of these a little bit. So I talked a lot about polyphosphate 30. Again, we found that this was very effective. The rate that we used was 2 ounces of polyphosphate 30 per 14 ounces of water per inch DBH. And per inch DBH, again, there was those 2 evenly spaced soil injection sites. So 2-inch DBH trees would get 4 injection sites. Okay, so Broadform. Broadform is a fungicide, and it can be applied as a foliar spray. It's a mix of fluopyram and trifloxystrobin, and there is actually a 2EE label for the listed states, and Maryland is one of them. So this is available for you to apply if you have that permit. So and the goal of this project is to prevent nematode migration to overwintering buds. So if you use your smart device to scan this QR code, it'll actually take you to the Broadform label for your reference. A little bit about the application timing. This product is a little strange. So you're supposed to do 3 applications of a product. There's 2 applications of Broadform. The first is in early July, and the second is in late July or early August. But because of the resistance management label requirement, they required that you alternate with a different class of fungicide in mid to late July. So the way that this would look is in this little diagram that I have here. You would apply the Broadform, and then you would apply an alternate product, and then a little bit later you would apply Broadform again. Now, because we don't know of another product like Broadform that is effective against beech leaf disease, we recommend some kind of foliar phosphate application that may be effective. As far as Arbitec 20S, this is a fungicide, and it's a trunk injection option. So there are some 24C special local needs labels, and out of those states, Maryland is included. The treatments are allowed every other year, so you have to skip a year between your treatments. And you want to make sure that you apply this after leaves have fully hardened off between June and July to avoid phytotoxicity. So you don't want to hurt your tree anymore. And it is noted that beech is a very thin bark species, and it does not respond well to trunk wounds. And research done by Bartlett using the same product showed that if you apply the product as an injection to the side of the root flare, the wound will actually close up a little bit better. So if you do choose to use this product, I recommend trying the side of the root flare, as so you don't create a large wound in your tree. So again, like with Broadform, if you scan that QR code, it'll take you right to the website and just choose the label for your state. So in summary, we found that our polyphosphate 30 application was very effective on saplings. It's really easy to apply, and it's something that can be used in a forest setting. So far, we don't have any data on large trees. We're still doing those trials. Treatment effects were delayed 1 to 2 years for saplings. A Broadform foliar spray provides an effective foliar spray option. They do require 2 applications per year with a second product between those 2 applications. And Arbitec 20S provides an effective trunk injection option. So with that, that is all I have on my end. And we should open it up to questions if anybody has them.
Great. Thank you, Brady. Yes. Oh, I have a ton of questions, but
Sure.
I don't want to hog the floor here, so I will just remind folks to please type your questions in for Brady and Daniel in the Q&A box, and we will be more than happy to address those. So while folks are typing, one thing that I'm really curious to hear more about is my understanding is that when beech leaf disease was first found in Ohio, it was primarily just affecting smaller trees, which may be why those have been more heavily studied. But as it's shifted over into New England and other regions, we're seeing mortality at all canopy strata. Um, is it still accurate that it's smaller trees that are primarily affected in Ohio? And is there any research or do you have some thoughts onto what might be driving those different patterns?
Sure. So here in Ohio, we are seeing trees of all diameter being affected with beech leaf disease. I am not sure exactly what diameter it was first discovered on, but certainly all DBH is affected in Ohio, and as far as I know, in the rest of the affected areas as well. It is important to note that saplings do have a higher mortality rate. So just because they're smaller, if they're more heavily affected, then they just die faster than larger trees. But it can kill a tree between like 5 and 7 years. We've seen it do that. So it is a really horribly destructive disease, no matter what size the tree is.
Thank you. All right, more the questions are starting to roll in. So start with a question from Oliver that might lead to kind of a sub-question. So if we're working on planting plans for ecological restoration projects, would you recommend no longer proposing beech plantings? And then I think the next logical question from there would be what species might be an appropriate substitute to replace some of those values that you were talking about, Daniel.
As far as I know, they haven't removed beech uh, trees from planting recommendations. It would be something to think about in the long run, for sure, especially like we've done with our ash species. Um, as far as recommendations for other species, I mean, I would go first with probably putting some oaks in, because we have quite a bit of, kind of a bottleneck of oak species where a lot of our mature oaks are coming out, succumbing to mortality, and we do have issues, which, deer browse and invasives aside, a lot of our oak species aren't regenerating as they should. That would be one of my recommendations, oak and maybe some hickory species, something to help fill in the gaps. Is I'm pretty sure with beech being a kind of a mesic species that maple are probably going to take over, and of course poplars becoming quite a bit of an issue in our forests out there, where they're very aggressive colonization trees anyway. But I would lead with oak, more oak in place of the beech trees.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of add on to that. So for planting proposals in Baltimore, we've definitely encouraged folks to shift away from beech just because of exactly like that ash analog that you mentioned. And I did see recently that Rutgers has a like kind of recommended substitute list that definitely is going to include like oaks and those mastic species that you mentioned. But if you're looking to diversify the mix. If you search for that Rutgers beech leaf disease, you might find those resources there. All right. So for Brady, a question for your colleague Lou. You mentioned we don't have research results on large trees for PP30 soil drenches. Do we have large tree research on trunk injections of the other products and approaches?
Yes, we do. So while Davy hasn't really explored those options yet, our friends at Bartlett Tree Expert Company has done research on both broadform and thiabendazole. There's a really excellent paper that was actually released this year that compared the two of them. So if the public wanted to check it out, go right ahead, but there are some really awesome results from Bartlett. So we are starting to recommend those products.
Great. Another question from an anonymous attendee. How far south do you anticipate beech leaf disease to spread? And what are the estimates for when it will reach down into central Virginia?
Oh boy. And Daniel, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but as far as I'm concerned, I think that it could be a threat to the entire range of beech wherever beech is and planted.
I would agree. I know it's some of the things like Rutgers and some of the areas I've expected. I know they've calculated approximately 60 feet per year in the Northeast, but I know it can spread at least 30 to 40 feet from infected trees within a growing year. But I would definitely say the entire host range. And of course, there's many factors to, the extreme weather events, human disturbance factors and everything withstanding. I would put it as the entire range of beech as well.
I agree with that.
And from Amanda, we have a question. Is anyone aware of funders that support prevention plans, management, and treatment for community managed forests or private forests?
I do not.
I know with the Maryland Forest Service, we're working with our U.S. Forest Service partners to try as far as the Northern Mid or NMFSA Forest Service. One of their priorities is dealing with invasives and beech leaf disease, and we're looking into trying to get some funding for that. And I know in the future I would also be interested in working with like the Northern Research Station. They do a lot of work with survivor trees such as like lingering ash and elm species. And there was some talk, I don't think they're at any point ready to go, but if we start seeing some lingering beech species out there, that would be something as far as doing some type of resistance breeding to maybe bring back. But I see that kind of a future. But we're always on the search for funding opportunities for us. I know there's various EQIP programs, and here in Maryland we have the WIP program, the Woodland and Sedum program. There would be areas where they could deal with management of the forest, stewardship, and working with invasive species. I'm sure there'd be ways in there. As far as our tree planting programs, there are cost share opportunities that are available, not specifically fit to beech leaf disease, but I think they can be as far as managing your forest land and areas. Not so much for the urban, but we're moving towards doing a lot more urban, but we can't forget about that because that's very important for the benefits that urban forests provide. So.
And are there some general guidelines as far as like kind of minimum acreage for the sort of project that you'd be getting involved with?
Most of the cost share, I think, started at about 5 acres and above. So I'm very vocal about not forgetting about those small, because we can clear large areas in some of the work and the planning I've done with invasive control. We clear some of those large areas around, but then you have all those smaller properties around it, and they have those invasive species, and they tend to come back. So we can't forget about connecting the framework and the landscape together. I know we try to look at things as a landscape level instead of just a single tree, and try to maximize the result and make it sustainable. So.
And we have a couple of nematode-specific questions in the mix. So from Michael, is mortality a result of defoliation alone, or are the nematodes moving down into the vascular system as well? And he also asks, do they only live in leaves and buds, or do they also persist in soil?
Sure, those are very good questions. So the leaves are present in the foliage as well as the buds throughout the growing season. And then in the winter, they overwinter in the buds. So they'll change the bud morphology. And then whenever the leaves leaf out again in the spring, that's when you really start to see that intervanal banding. I have not seen any studies that have discussed these nematodes entering the vascular system of the trees and or persisting in the soil. And I'm not quite sure if raking up those leaves would prevent inoculum, but I guess in some cases it probably couldn't hurt to do so, especially in a landscaping kind of situation. But of course, in the forest, it's kind of unpreventable and you can't really do that. But yeah, so I guess my final answer would be that yeah, I haven't seen anything that said anything about vasculature or persisting in the soil.
Such a I've never really dealt with nematodes before, so it's all just very it's kind of a fascinating organism, but it's a whole new ball of wax. But speaking of nematodes and other other pathogens, Lou asks if there's any suspicion of the nematodes vectoring another disease. So could they be potentially carriers for something else?
Yeah, I also haven't heard anything about them vectoring things. Oftentimes when you do get cases of beech leaf disease, it often stresses the tree out so that maybe something like anthracnose could also be present. But as far as I know, I don't believe that the nematodes are actually vectoring any other disease. I just know that their feeding and their activity is the thing that's causing the beech leaves to distort and defoliate.
Thank you. And so related to a question that Gary had, so Gary was asking if there is a preventive treatment that can be done, and sort of related to that in terms of timing with the disease, is there kind of a tipping point for trees in terms of how heavily impacted they might be by symptoms where it's no longer useful to treat?
Sure. So in the study, when we changed our treatment groups in 2023, that's something that we kind of wanted to look at. We had some trees that were kind of approaching the super, like, canopy was thinning, leaves were dying back, and that kind of thing. And we wanted to kind of figure out where that point of no return is. And because it's the study's only a couple years old since the treatment change, we don't really have results for that quite yet. But that's certainly something that we are looking into. So I would imagine that that point would be a lot, it would be a lot sooner in our saplings than in our larger trees, just because the tree is smaller. And as far as preventative treatments, I don't believe that we have one. But I guess it wouldn't hurt to check the labels of Broadform and Arbitect to see. But I don't believe that anything's been used is being used preventatively right now.
Yeah, and I'm curious as far as like PP30, since it's a fertilizer, if there's like, could we provide the trees with like a protective benefit before they're symptomatic? Is it also possible that before we're seeing like the intervanal banding, that nematodes might be present and it's just we don't know what we don't know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if if nematodes are present, it might take maybe a few years for them to actually cause symptoms that are noticeable to us. But I believe that there are studies being conducted to see if we can detect it earlier. through the use of different lights or radar, stuff like that. So certainly that would be really interesting to be able to detect it before it spreads.
It's really remarkable, like since as short a time relative to the landscape that beech leaf disease has been present. The amount that we know already, but it's also, I think that our nature is to want to know everything immediately, and we're still in the process of learning. So we have just a couple minutes left, so we have a final question from Lou, and then I will kick it over to Gary to close us out. So Lou asks if there are any municipalities in Ohio or other earlier infestation regions that have implemented management plans that Maryland might replicate, and if you have any feedback on successes or pain points.
As far as the treatment, I'm really not quite sure. I've just been helping out with the research, so unfortunately, I haven't really had the opportunity to apply it in that sense. But yeah, Daniel, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I know as the work that we've begun with in the Baltimore metropolitan area dealing with that, we're trying to work to develop a response plan for their parks. And I'm interested. I have begun reaching out to other states, and that, you know, and especially down in Ohio, to try to see, you know, what they have. You know, I'm all about not recreating the wheel. If something is out there that Maryland can use and works for Maryland, you know, for the most part, I'm interested in it. So this is something that as soon as we can get it there, we can. I know we had one kind of for the ash response, and you know, the sooner we can get on it, we can become a little bit more proactive instead of reactive. So.
All right. Well, thank you both for your time and expertise. This is a really important topic, and I'm really grateful that we were able to get some good information out there for folks. So with that, I'll pass it to Gary, who is going to talk about an exciting entry in the webinar series coming up in September.
Thank you very much, Megan, and let me add my thanks to Daniel and Brady for the excellent presentation that they just provided us. This is, as Daniel pointed out several times in his comments, a very threatening threat to many people. They look at it and they see the an amount of beech in the canopy, the older beech that are certainly a prized part of many landscapes, particularly public landscapes and parks. In my own community back in Maryland, we have a area of historic beech trees that once led into the city uh, several hundred years ago that have been preserved and protected by the municipal government as a high priority in tree care for over 100 years. And the net effect is this is a big threat to many people to lose that kind of historic landmark in our own community. So I want to thank you very much for lending your insight into how these things might be addressed. And it's clear some additional research, particularly for older and more mature trees, is still in the offering, and the need is pressing. And so we want to encourage your work. We want to support your work. And if there's anything we can do here in Maryland in the private sector of forestry to encourage it, please let us know. One of the things, obviously, I hope is this webinar will encourage people to look further into the opportunities, how they might get involved and remain in contact with you as the research advances. Having said that, we're concluding our fourth year of the Framing the Future series next month. And to celebrate that anniversary, we have a very special program lined up for September, and that is with Dr. Doug Taumey, one of the gurus of how to landscape the backyards of Maryland's citizens, one yard at a time, so to speak. So it is creating a sustainable landscape 1 yard at a time is his title with us in September. Doug is going to be joining us the third Thursday of September, as all of our programs are on the third Thursday. Many of you will be familiar with Doug's work simply because he's talked about bringing nature home and the value of what work every individual citizen can do on their own property to help advance the preservation of local ecology in their community. He's also, in the context of our comments today, written a book about the value of oaks in that landscape and also the threat that is emerging about oaks in our Maryland landscape and across the eastern seaboard in particular. It's a reference to the fact that now we're seeing not only oaks but beech and ash and other types of tree species emerging as there now seem to be a kind of a almost annual highlight for some new thing that's featured in terms of threats of insects or disease that is affecting the landscape and what we need to deal with it. So I want to encourage all of you to tune in next month. I want to thank you for tuning in today, and we look forward to continuing to share our webinar series each month of Framing the Future. And again, thank all of you for being with us. Daniel, Brady, and especially Megan, our moderator. Thank you, Megan. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.